the Penn State Nittany Lions came up just short of a national title appearance, and now there seems to be a lot of pressure to get to the national title in 2025. Thank you guys for tuning in. I am Colin Bashingle here at Bash the CFB Show. You can find me over here on TikTok if you just research or search up that. Make sure you like the video if you like the video and subscribe to the channel for more college football content. This is like the fourth one we've done today. I'm actually going to turn off this fan real quick to make sure there's no echo. All right, we got it done. I got out of shot a little bit, but I'm not going to have a retake over that. So let's get into what Penn State is going through right here. A program that is very, number one, polarizing at the very moment, and number two, and especially the coach, by the way, polarizing. But number two, a program that has a lot of expectations going into the season. Now, if you take a look at 2024, the regular season went how most regular seasons went. They didn't play Michigan, and obviously Michigan wasn't even at the top of the sport a year ago like they had been the previous 3 years, but they did play Ohio State in the regular season. They won all the games they were supposed to win and lost the one game they were supposed to lose. And that's the frustration of Penn State fans. Went to the Big Ten Championship after Michigan upset Ohio State. I was there. It was an incredible experience. Sat with a bunch of Oregon fans. But when I left Lucas Oil Stadium that night, I was surrounded by a bunch of frustrated, angry Penn State fans saying that we'd never get it done in the big game, the game that we're not supposed to win necessarily. We want to be that team that's supposed to win that game. We want to be that team that everybody believes in, and you're just not. And the bottom line is, when they got to the playoff, it was nice to beat SMU. It was nice to beat Boise State, but when push came to shove and it was time to strap it up against Notre Dame, you outplay them for a lot of that game. And when it comes down to the wire, because Notre Dame was a tough, gritty team, Drew Aller forced a pass that he should not have, leading to an interception that led to a game-winning field goal for Notre Dame. Notre Dame got to the national championship off of that, instead of Penn State getting the rematch against Ohio State that they had probably desperately wanted. So they got to turn the page to 2025, and boy, are they getting a lot of hype. The way that they returned all of these guys, a lot of guys on the offensive line. I know Cooper Cousins is a little bit of a concern or an unknown on the offensive line, a talented freshman at guard that needs to show a track of development as a sophomore. The rest of the O-line, though, very experienced. Nolan Rushi is one of the guys on the offensive line at the right tackle spot that is very, very hyped up. You also have Drew Shelton coming back at left tackle, not to mention, how can I forget? I started with the O-line when you got Katron Allen and Nick Singleton both coming back at the running back spot. And, yeah, they did lose Tyler Warren, which was an insane playmaker. And I don't think Khalil Dinkins or Luke Reynolds, the backup tight end, I don't think either of those guys are going to be Tyler Warren, but are they going to have to be? Well, they addressed wide receiver in the portal pretty significantly. Now, two guys I could tell you a lot about is Trevor Pena, a very good red zone threat, a touchdown threat, very good hands, a smooth route runner. I say red zone threat because that's kind of how it ended up working out with Syracuse, and he got a lot of touchdowns. But don't get me wrong, this guy definitely can do more than just that. He's not a big contested catch target. He just finds a way to get open, in particular for touchdowns in the red zone area. Kyron Hudson is also a really good player. Now, don't get your hopes up too much about Kyron Hudson, because I do know this. He was probably the fourth best receiver, maybe fifth best receiver on USC's roster last year. Mekhi Lemon, to me, probably better. I know Jacoby Lane is definitely better. I think Zachariah Branch, though it didn't really transpire, could have been better on last year's team. And Deuce Robinson, he has a lot of tools. He just never put it together. I think those guys all have more potential, but that still was a really deep wide receiver room if you're going to wide receiver 4 or 5, being Kyron Hudson. He's still a really solid player. So I definitely like that pickup. I think that's a good fit for Kyron Hudson, trying to be a standout somewhere. And at USC, he wasn't going to be the standout. Even if he went back this year, he'd still be probably the third option behind Mekhi Lemon and Jacoby Lane. Now, Devontae Ross is a little bit of a question mark to me. He did perform at the group of 5 level, but how I know they're not necessarily like similar players, but how similar does this feel to Dante Cephas coming in from Kent State a couple years ago? Well, there's also a couple of guys that you can look to because wide receiver was a problem, and that's why we're talking about it. I think Trey Wallace wasn't a bad player at all. I think he was a pretty solid receiver, and clearly, football people do agree with me because Lane Kiffin ended up adding him to Ole Miss. Amari Evans, you did lose him. Julian Fleming graduated. I don't think that he was really all he was cracked up to be coming out of high school, and what happened with him this offseason after his football career ended, that was tragic. And all of my prayers go to Julian Fleming and the victim, of course, in this is his girlfriend and her family. Just a little diatribe there, but all prayers have been with them for the last couple of months. Tysier Denmark is a player that has shined as a young player, and they also have Liam Clifford, the younger brother of Sean Clifford, the quarterback a couple years ago, who's now in the NFL. And then Caden Saunders is a kid that I really want to see perform because obviously I'm an Ohio State fan. I'm a Central Ohio guy. He's from Westville South. I want to see him perform. So we'll see if one of those receivers that have been there can step up to be a part of that rotation with those 3 transfer receivers that I mentioned. How about this defense? Well, a lot of folks out there who talk about this defense, they talk about deny Dennis Sutton. I really like Zane Durant, the defensive tackle. He is a beast. He is a monster. He's experienced. I loved watching him and Keziah Izzard in the middle. Now, of course, Izzard has moved on, but he is back, and I'm excited to see what he could bring to the table. I love what this D-line could potentially be. Even though they don't have a game record like Abdul Carter, they're going to be really solid against the run. And they're also going to be pretty decent getting after the passer. They also bring back Tony Rojas. And Tony Rojas has made a lot of big-time plays in his time at Penn State, really just last year, being the starter next to Dom DeLuca. And DeLuca, though, he is back, and I think he's going to rotate in there. Anthony Specca is a young player that they really like. I hope I said that right, by the way. Ultimately, I think this linebacker core is very good when you got about 4 or 5 guys, because Amari Campbell coming in as well, another guy they're confident in. At the linebacker spot, you got depth and you got talent. The secondary, it's going to be interesting to me. Elliott Washington going to start at one corner spot. I know A.J. Harris can really play, the transfer previously from Georgia. I know he can play. He's a pretty solid player. Zion Tracy is a really good nickelback. So that other cornerback spot, I'm curious to see what Elliott Washington is going to look like out there. And then you got Lane and Wheatley. I mean, Zakee Wheatley's an absolute freak, but Lane replacing Reed back there at safety, that's going to be an interesting point to watch for to see if he can be as valuable to this defense as Jalen Reed was a year ago. Ultimately, though, I think this defense could be really good. When you look at the special teams, they bring back their punter, their place kicker. I'm not sure about the place kicker, but I know the punter, Riley Thompson, is back. It's going to be fun to see this Penn State team this year because I think they have a lot of potential. And when you look at the schedule too, I mean, take a breath. What are we doing with this out-of-conference schedule? Look, I know what Kurt Signetti said. I know that you got 9 conference games here, and Nebraska and Indiana is no slouch. Iowa on the road is no slouch, and Oregon and Ohio State, they're 2 of the top teams in the conference. I get that. oh man, this out of conference schedule is so rough. So rough. Yeah, that's all I got to say about that. But yeah, when you look at their in conference schedule, because obviously their non con is a huge warm up, getting Oregon first game off of bye and those three non con games, that is huge. Getting Ohio State off of bye, Ohio State is also off of bye, but it kind of saves you from back to back road trips, I guess, because of course, Iowa, a road trip before the bye, Ohio State, a road trip, even though it's back to back, you still get that week off being back in state college. I think Nebraska and Indiana, both those games could be dangerous on the road. So the fact that they played both of them at home, especially Nebraska, like I am very high on Nebraska this year, very bullish on it. Ultimately, though, like the schedule is super workable for Penn State to get right back to the playoff and potentially right back to the Big Ten championship. So let's talk about the Penn State schedule predictions. I'm going to go straight out and just give you the 3 wins out of conference. I do want to quickly touch on Nevada and FIU. It's the second year of Jeff Choate. I think this defense is definitely going to be very well coached and present a little bit of problems that Penn State could study on film. The talent discrepancy is huge. I mean, it's just massive, the amount of talent that Penn State has in comparison to Nevada. It's just not comparable. Like, they're going to be so much better, and they're going to be able to outweigh them and probably dominate them. But a Jeff Choate defense can give you a lot to work with on the offensive side of the ball. And then the following week with FIU. Now, granted, it's a brand new head coach with Willie Simmons, and their offense did lose their top receiver from a year ago in Eric Rivers, but I still think their offense could present a little bit of problems. And being game 2 in September, like maybe not as many problems as you would get from FIU later in the season, but I think that could be a good film study for your defense going into that Oregon game. So these 2 out-of-conference games against Nevada and FIU, and I want to just write off Villanova, but I'm talking about those 2 FBS teams, Nevada and FIU. It could definitely give you a good contrast of style and a good look at what you're going to have this upcoming season. So you get into the Oregon game. This is a massive game where they're going to have a lot of pressure to win this ball game. It's going to be a whiteout. It's going to be on NBC at 7:30, which tells me, by the way, that Fox drafted Ohio State for 3 freaking games because they get the first 3 picks. Texas, I assume, is one of them. I think the other one's probably Penn State. So as a Buckeye fan myself, I'm very mad that this game was not chosen by Big Noon. I think Oregon, being a West Coast team, definitely has a huge factor into that. Regardless of all that, though, the whiteout environment, Dante Moore, he's not going to experience anything like this beforehand. And I've heard some weird stuff about Dante Moore in camp, and I was already on Penn State beforehand. I'm going to be on Penn State to win this game off a bye, like I said, and Oregon with the west to east trip, playing in a whiteout with a new quarterback and not having a great receiver in Evan Stewart this year. I think that's where that's going to really hurt him. So I think Penn State's going to get it done. Now, this is a little bit of a rough spot to get UCLA because I think UCLA has a lot of talent, in particular on the offensive side of the ball. But I think that Penn State just has enough talent and enough focus on what's ahead of Penn State instead of we just beat Oregon, like we got over the hump. I don't think that's going to be the mindset. I think Penn State is going to be ready here. Northwestern, back at home. Northwestern's just not going to have the talent to be able to compete. This should be an easy win. Now, this next game against Iowa, I was back and forth on. Though I understand a lot of the concern about Mark Gronowski's ability to throw the football at Iowa, he's got some mobility, and he's still better than what Iowa's had. I mean, heck, he's a winner. He started over 50 games for one of the best programs at the FCS level as South Dakota State. He won 2 national championships. He won the FCS Heisman once, was a finalist for it a year ago. Like, this guy can really play. I think he's a baller. Like, I just think that he's got that like Stetson Bennett in him, that underdog mentality, which is what makes Iowa super dangerous. And both Oregon and Penn State have to go to Iowa. And without trying to spoil Oregon's season, and I don't want to like drive away Oregon fans because I think they're going to be really good. One of those teams are going to fall. But I think James Franklin remembers the last road trip they took to Kinnick Stadium. And in my mind, I'm pretty sure this is the last one. They went to Iowa in 2021. They should have beat them, and then Sean Clifford got hurt, and they were left with Taquan Roberson, who could not throw the football whatsoever, and Iowa stormed back and won that game. I think James Franklin remembers that, and a healthy Penn State beats this Iowa team. This Iowa team is going to be pretty solid, and they're going to be a dangerous team. I think if this was the old way of the Big Ten West, they could be the favorite to come out of the Big Ten West, them or Nebraska. But we're not split up in divisions, and Iowa's got a little bit of a tougher schedule. And one of those tough games is Penn State. And I think Penn State is going to get the job done. They move into the bye week, the second bye week, 7-0, and Ohio State's going to be coming off a bye week too. They're going to Ohio State. It's been a house of horrors, and Ohio State's been a horrible team and a horrible matchup for Drew Waller. See, here's a big thing about Drew Waller, right? He performed well against Oregon last year. In 2 tries against Ohio State, he has not performed well. Why am I to believe that that's going to be different if I'm going to be going out on TikTok just earlier today and making the statement that I believe Ohio State has the best secondary in America? They have one of the best duos at linebacker in America. This defense, I get it's a Jim Knowles revenge game and all that. But the defense was not the reason why they lost to Ohio State the last 2 years. I mean, sure, Marvin Harrison Jr. had a big game against Penn State 2 years ago. Last year, though, if you look at that game, the only touchdown Penn State scored at home was a defensive touchdown, a pick six. I'm not counting on that in the shoe. This offense has to show me that they can perform, even if it's a different defense with Matt Patricia and you got Jim Knowles now. I don't care. I do not believe you can beat Ohio State, especially on the road, until you show me you do it. I am taking Ohio State to win that game against Penn State, giving Penn State their first loss of the season. Of course, Ohio State we have not previewed yet. That's going to be the next Big Ten video. So be excited for that Ohio State preview. Me being an Ohio State fan, I'm ready to be a little bit obnoxious in that video, but not over the top. I'm going to be realistic. Then they play Indiana back at home. If they get a win against Ohio State, this is a massive letdown spot. Indiana's a really good team still, and I think a lot of folks are sleeping on that. I mean, you got Omar Cooper and Elijah Surratt back. They got one of the best running backs in the portal, in Roman Hemby. I think that this Indiana team is very dangerous. Their defense is still going to be pretty solid. I think Indiana is going to fall just short of pulling off the upset against Penn State. This Penn State team, I think, will be able to refocus pretty quickly, especially off of a loss against Ohio State, and recognize what's in front of them. Indiana is going to keep it close, though. This is going to be maybe a one-score game late in the fourth quarter, maybe end a one-score game. Indiana is going to be a tough team. At Michigan State's going to also be a very tough road trip. If Jonathan Smith's team is going to peak, it's going to be now in mid-November, late November. That's when Michigan State's going to be playing their best. I'm telling you, this last 5 games after the bye week is an underrated stretch. It's going to be a tough game. And if you guys remember the Minnesota game from a year ago, I know you Penn State fans do. Minnesota very easily could have stole that game. I think Michigan State could very easily steal this game, but I think Penn State makes one play and gets it done, just like they did against Minnesota a year ago. Nebraska, another team that I'm very high on this offseason. This is where the schedule gets really tough, like I said. This Nebraska team is going to be very, very gritty. This is going to be yet another tough game. Truly, if they were at Nebraska, I would take the Cornhuskers, but that home field advantage is going to be just a little too much for the Cornhuskers. Penn State survives yet again to improve to 10-1 before a road trip at Rutgers. It's going to be a sleepy spot for Rutgers for sure. I don't think there's going to be a lot of fans there the Saturday after Thanksgiving. And this Rutgers team, I think, has a little bit of talent, but just not enough to compete with the big dogs. I got with Penn State winning this game, going 11-1, and very, very possibly with a chance to go to the conference championship. With that being said, that will conclude it for this video. I tried to actually get it done because I got a lot of motivation. Definitely stayed up way too late tonight to do this, but I'm excited to finish this video. And I'm having my wife send it to a couple of our friends from her school. So you know who you are. If you watch this video, shout out to you. Thank you for tuning in. Really appreciate it. I'll see you guys in the next one.